She came down the alley as she always did, except tonight. She stopped just short of the chipped milk crate where the shadows usually welcomed her. Something had shifted, not in the wind, which barely stirred, but in the smell. It wasn't the usual baked brick and forgotten citrus peel. Tonight, the air held something stranger, the metallic ghost of wet wool, like an old coat left in the rain too long, and the trace of rust you taste rather than smell. Her ears angled backward. She waited. The city hummed beyond her reach. Buses, exhaling at the interchange. A motorbike throttling through an amber light. A snippet of a child's song blaring from a balcony radio and then silenced. But here, down the backside of Matlock Street, where the gate leaned drunkenly against the fibro wall, the world forgot itself, except her. She remembered, her pads pressed into the cracked concrete, still damp from yesterday's rain. She moved, with the hush of someone hoping not to be noticed, and yet hoping just as much to be seen. That torn feeling again. It stretched from her spine to the tip of her tail. She'd once known the shape of this place when it was whole, before the hand. The first time it touched her, she had flinched, but it had waited, fingers with something patient in them. Not soft. No, never soft, but kind. That kind that doesn't show itself with words, but in the way it pauses before placing down a bowl, or lets its knuckle rest against your jaw like it doesn't want anything in return. She'd trusted it. Once. Then it had gone. Or perhaps she had. She couldn't be sure anymore. Tonight, though, something felt less gone. Something was folded in the silence. Something like an answer buried under a floorboard. The blue light above the unit's door flickered, not with electricity, but hesitation. It stuttered once, twice, then held, and then a scrap of paper, pale and square, skidded along the concrete, against the breeze. She turned, body taut. The paper didn't flap or tumble. It moved deliberately, dragging a small tail of moisture behind it, like it knew where it was going. When it stopped, it settled exactly 3 inches from her front paw, too close to be chance. She sniffed. Ink. Fresh and sharp with the sourness of citrus cleaner. Numbers. And one word, almost too small to read. Again. She didn't touch it. She never touched what didn't smell of the hand. Above her, in the second-floor window, something stirred. A silhouette. No. A shape that mimicked one. It stepped back before she could decide. Still crouched. She turned. Toward the gate. She could leap it. She had before. But tonight she hesitated. Not out of fear. Something older. Like the moment before rain, when the world breathes in. From the other side of the alley, a bin lid clanged shut. Her ears flicked. Not the usual clang. Not metal against metal. More like a hand trying not to be heard. She inched forward. The door hadn't changed. Paint flaking in 3 spots. Letterbox taped shut. The faint print of a child's sticker long scraped away but not forgotten. She knew this door, but tonight it felt like it didn't know her. Still, she came. She always came. The first stair groaned beneath her weight. A gentle complaint, not a protest. At the top, she stopped. The curtain on the second-floor window moved. Not from breeze, from something behind it, watching. She didn't blink. Her tail curled inward. Then, softly, like someone trying not to wake the past, the door creaked open 1/2 inch. She didn't move. She didn't knock. The paper scrap behind her rustled once, then folded neatly in on itself, like a letter finished being read. And from the dark inside, a smell she hadn't allowed herself to remember. Lavender and tobacco. The scent of the hand. She returned. The next night, as she always did, though always had started to feel like a word from another time. Too stable, too certain. The wind had changed direction. Not in the air, but in the alley itself, where it moved differently now, as if it had grown curious. As she passed the old shopping trolley overturned near the drain, her eyes caught a black smudge caught in the grate, a slick tuft, thick and still wet. Fur, her fur, or something that knew how to wear it. She edged closer. The drain exhaled a scent she didn't know how to name, like breath that had waited too long to be let out. She looked down. The fur floated just out of reach, not moving. Then, for one brief moment, it blinked. Not a twitch, not a trick of the water, but a blink. She stepped back, slow. The building's side door clicked, a quiet sound too sharp for rust and too soft for wind. She glanced up. Nothing moved, but the concrete shimmered like something had just passed through it. She padded toward the bin enclosure, drawn by the smell of something once warm. Roast chicken. Hours cold, and underneath it, a note of something floral, not flowers in bloom, but crushed petals on skin. Elderflower. Her steps slowed. The smell pulled her deeper into the shadows until she reached the usual bowl, white, chipped at the rim, no longer upright. It lay on its side, the water inside, spilled in a shape that resembled a question. She nosed it gently. It righted itself without resistance, as if it had just been placed down, still remembering the hand that set it. Then the voice came. Not a word, not quite. More a looped sound, just under breath, like someone calling across a body of water that no longer existed. It came from behind her. No, above. She turned, and the light in the second-floor window blinked twice, a pattern. Her ears twitched, not toward the sound, but the silence that followed. It held too long. Something watched her from the window, and she wasn't sure anymore if it had eyes. Her fur bristled along her spine, but she didn't run. At the foot of the stairwell, a piece of paper stuck to the wall. She hadn't noticed it before. A receipt, faded, edges curled. She leapt to the window ledge to inspect it. The date was smudged, but the time was clear. 2:03 a.m. Tonight. Scrawled beneath in black ink. Don't forget her. Her? Or herself? She blinked, and the paper lifted in the still air, floated off the wall like it had never been attached, and spiraled down to the alley floor. It didn't land. It vanished just above the concrete. She heard it then. A meow. Not hers, and not quite a cat's. A clipped mimic sound from the mouth of something that had heard cats but never been one. Her body tensed, instinct sharp and ancient, but she remained. She turned slowly, tracing the edges of the alley with her eyes. The voice meowed again, closer, more convincing, too convincing. It stopped when she looked straight at the drain. No sound now, no wind. Even the city, beyond the alley's mouth, seemed to pause. Then a thud, soft, but unmistakable. Something fell from above. She looked up. Nothing there, but at her feet, a key, small, rusted, with teeth worn thin. She knew keys. This one didn't fit the main door. It was for something older, something forgotten. She lifted it gently between her teeth. It tasted of rain, and something like milk turned sour. She placed it next to the bowl, as if the hand might come and know what it meant. The bowl moved, only slightly, but enough to make the key spin once. She stared, not at the movement, at the sound. The key had landed in a puddle she hadn't seen before. Its surface rippled outward as if something beneath it had exhaled. From the upper window the curtain shifted, this time, not from behind, from the fabric itself, like it had skin, or memory. She stepped back from the bowl. The black tuft of fur had disappeared from the drain, and the alley smelled briefly, not of the city, not of food, but of the inside of a cupboard, where someone had once hidden something, soft. Tonight the air felt denser, as though the buildings themselves had leaned closer, their brickwork holding breath. Not humid, no, but thick, like steam rising off bitumen just after rain, mingled with the sour tang of something electric and old. She stepped lightly onto the low brick lip beneath the garage window, paws pressing against moss that hadn't existed yesterday. It squelched slightly, its softness unnatural in this place of heat and fumes and day-long shadows. Her fur caught the scent of ozone, like distant lightning chewing through copper wire. She looked up, and then the balcony blinked. Not the light, not the person behind the curtain, the balcony itself. The metal rail bowed, flexed, then stilled, as if testing the air for memory. Her breath stalled. It was too deliberate. She dropped, back down and crept toward the side gate, which was ajar tonight, not wide but cracked just enough to suggest an invitation or a warning. From there, she could see the path curling upward, red-stained pavers lined with overgrown kikuyu, broken glass wedged into dirt like teeth. Somewhere above, beyond the third stair, came a familiar sound, ceramic on concrete, not crashing but placed. Then liquid, slow, reluctant, poured into something hollow. No footsteps, no voices, just the soft domestic choreography of hands she could no longer smell. She crept closer. The second-floor curtain moved, and this time she saw it clearly, folding. Inward, not outward, as though something on the inside had inhaled. She stilled. A smell reached her then, thick and strange. Scorched almond, and the powdery sweetness of forgotten biscuits, underscored by something acrid, burnt nylon perhaps, or hair. Her ears flicked back. That scent had once meant comfort. Long ago. The night the hand had dropped a tray and laughed softly in the dark. But this was not that night. The laugh, if it had returned, was twisted, hollowed out and echoing between beams. She climbed. The stairwell was too quiet, its silence tightly wrapped. Even her steps made no sound. The wall graffiti she remembered, bloodworm, was here, had vanished, replaced by a smooth gray patch shaped like a doorway without seams or handles. She sniffed it. The paint vibrated faintly, as if someone had knocked from the other side hours ago, and the sound had only now begun to arrive. Further up, a rope creaked once, not taut but suggestive, not swinging but stilled mid-motion. At the top landing, the hallway light sputtered, framing her shadow, then stealing it back. She paused. A scent moved under the main door. Crushed. Peppercorns, dried eucalyptus, and the faint metallic sharpness of canned peaches just before expiry. Her body lowered into a crouch. Not fear, but respect, like bowing to something just beyond understanding. A brushing sound began. Not outside, not in the room, but inside the wall, directly beside her. A slow, repeated motion. Not fur, not claws. A smooth glide, like the gesture of a hand stroking something that no longer existed. Her muscles tensed, not to flee, to feel. From within, something fell, not crashed, just let go. A photo frame, perhaps. The sound was specific, intimate. Glass meeting linoleum with the weight of memory. She turned. At the hallway's end, where the mirror had once hung and been taken down by the super, it now stood again, immaculate. She approached, looked in. The reflection showed her, but not here, not now. It showed her curled on a cushion she didn't recognize. Green velvet, maybe. A quiet domestic green. A hand rested just behind her ears, unmoving, solid, familiar. She blinked. The image stayed. Then, impossibly, the mirror tilted forward, not toward her, toward the ground, and smiled. The alley didn't sound the same tonight. The hum had changed pitch, like the buildings were holding in a frequency she couldn't quite hear, but could feel in her teeth. As she stepped onto the tiles behind the stairwell, the ground exhaled. Not wind, not air, but something deeper. A silent thrum that pulsed beneath the soles of her paws like a slow heartbeat buried under concrete. She froze. It happened again. Not timed with her movement, not echoing the world above. A rhythm of its own. Her ears twitched backward, picking up nothing and everything. The distant rattle of a broken fan blade turning even when unplugged. A door slamming 2 streets away but somehow arriving from behind her. She moved forward, tracing the edge of the wall with her whiskers, until she reached the square of loose tile she had once used as a shortcut through the fence gap. Only now, it wasn't loose. It was warm, too warm for midnight. She sniffed. The smell was wrong. Cardboard soaked in honey, old linoleum peeled from the floor of a childhood kitchen, and underneath it all, something like a rusted harmonica left too long in someone's pocket. She pressed her paw gently. The tile sighed. Not a creak, not a crack. A true sigh, soft and bitter. She withdrew. Above her, the second-floor light was off, but the balcony door stood ajar. That door had never been open. She stared at it too, long, the way prey stares at the space between shadows. Her tail stiffened. The bowl was gone tonight. In its place, something else. A fragment of cloth. She approached, wary. The cloth was dark, not black, but the bruised color of dried berries. It bore a button at one edge, a tiny plastic circle etched with the letter M. She didn't understand letters, but she understood what shouldn't be there. She pawed it. Beneath it, something moved. Not the cloth, but the tile below it, lifting slightly, just enough to catch the light in a way that created an eye. Not literally, but the impression was undeniable. She stepped back. The cloth remained perfectly still, and so did she, until the smell returned. Not of food or memory, but nail polish. Sharp, red, like heat in a bottle. The scent of preparation, of someone getting ready to leave. It burned in her nostrils. From behind her came a click, not mechanical, but like the sound of a tongue against teeth. She spun, low and tight to the ground, but saw only the alley's bend, and the faint shadow of something retreating just out of range, its tail too long, too still. She didn't follow. Instead, she turned back toward the door and found the cloth gone. Not moved. Gone. In its place now, an imprint in the dust, paw-shaped but too wide. The toes splayed like something had landed instead of walked. The pulse came again beneath her feet, this time stronger, and something inside her chest answered. Not her heart, something older. A part of her that remembered warmth not as comfort, but as warning. She hissed, quietly, and the tile in front of her lifted a hair's breadth, then settled as if satisfied. Far above, the balcony door swayed open farther. No wind, nothing visible. But it opened, and the sound it made was not wooden, not metal, but the exact pitch of someone clearing their throat to speak, and then deciding not to. Tonight nothing opened with a sound, but everything seemed ajar. She noticed it before she reached the alley, a strange quiet that wasn't stillness but suggestion, as though the buildings had forgotten to breathe out. The window above Unit 3B was wide this time, not swinging, not forced, just open in a way that felt rehearsed, as if it had always been meant to open tonight and no other. The curtain didn't move. No light flickered from inside, but something beyond the glass shimmered faintly, a distortion like heat rising from soil, though the air was cold enough to tighten her paws. She crept along the fence, body low, ears drawn back, eyes focused on the porch steps that now held something new. A set of 3 marbles, perfectly aligned, green, blue, red. They hadn't been there before. They didn't belong to any child who lived here because no children had lived here since the flat went dark last summer. The red marble twitched, just once. Then all 3 remained still. She didn't go near them. She knew games. This was one, but not hers. Instead, she turned toward the bin enclosure, where the metal flap lay wide open without any trash inside. Empty, except for a single shoelace, clean, white, curled in a spiral like it had been placed rather than discarded. From somewhere nearby came the sound of a zipper being drawn closed, not fast, a slow, meditative slide of teeth locking into place. She moved back toward the steps, tail low, when a low whistle rose from above. Not melodic, not familiar, just 4 notes that dropped, one after another like stones into a dry well. The porch light flickered, not electrically, but more like it was blinking in a slow panic, unsure if it should stay on or disappear completely. She didn't look up, not yet. Instead, she padded carefully to the edge of the stairwell and paused. As the scent hit her, new and sharp, like crushed mint mixed with something plastic, like the smell of a toy split open to reveal wires and scentless stuffing. Her back paw nudged something. She turned quickly. A hairbrush, wooden handle, no bristles, none at all, just the holes where bristles had once been. She stepped around it without touching and climbed the stairs, each one colder than the last. At the landing, the air thickened. Not heat, not smoke, just density, like walking through forgotten breath. She blinked slowly. The window ahead held her reflection for a moment. Not the usual double, just her, alone in the glass. Then, without sound, the cupboard in the hallway opened. Not wide, not fast, just enough for her to see its inside, lined with wrapping paper printed with snowmen, slightly peeling. It smelled of oranges left too long in a bowl, and something else, something sweet, fermented, like cordial from another room. Inside the cupboard, a folded towel sat neatly on the shelf. Beneath it, 2 claws, not hers. She stepped back. The door didn't move. The claws didn't either. But their shape was familiar, like a memory misfiled. Too long, too pale, slightly curved inward as if clenching a hope that had already passed. She meowed once, soft, uncertain. The cupboard remained open, but the claws were gone. She hadn't blinked. They were just no longer there. Behind her, a shape moved past the window. Not across it, but inside the wall it looked out from. She turned her head slowly, tracking nothing. The marbles on the steps were gone. In their place, a single black glove, child-sized, filled. Not with a hand, but filled nonetheless. She didn't approach. Instead, she sat down, just out of the light, and waited for whatever had opened to show whether it could also close. The bowl had returned. She saw it before turning the final corner, perched not in its usual place near the base of the steps, but halfway up the stairwell, as though it had climbed part way and lost its nerve. It glinted under the porch light, though the light wasn't on. The glint came from something else, something inside it. She approached slowly, each step feeling wrong underpaw, too dry, as if stripped of their usual chill, like they'd been stored in sunlight and forgotten. When she reached the bowl, She stopped. Water, clear, still, but not silent. It made a sound, not splash, not trickle, but a tone, faint and continuous, like a mouth forming a vowel just beneath breath. She leaned in. The sound didn't change. It wasn't music. It wasn't voice. It was closer to intention, like someone remembering how to speak but not yet committing to language. She touched the water with one claw. The surface pulsed outward in ripples, but didn't distort her reflection. Instead, it sharpened it. She saw her own eyes as if from outside herself, clearer than she'd ever seen them. And then she heard it. Words, barely there, tucked into the curve of the bowl like something trying to hide. Not yet. Not yet. The voice didn't sound like the hand, but it knew her. She pulled back. The air thickened around her chest, not heavy, but close, too close. She turned to the open door at the top of the stairs. It was open now, wide and waiting. The smell changed. No longer citrus, no longer ash. This was different. Milk turned in a warm room, linen aired too long, a scent of pause. She stepped toward it, 3 slow paces, each one echoed by something unseen. Her tail flicked once, involuntary. To her left, the hallway mirror flickered, not with her reflection, but with movement. Something crossing behind where her image should have been. She hissed, not loud, low, just enough to mark the edge of something. And in response, the bowl behind her began to spin, not tipped, not touched, just rotating on its own axis with a sound like teeth grinding quietly behind lips. She didn't look back, not this time. The doorway called. She passed the threshold. Inside, the room was familiar and not. Same couch, same picture frame on the floor, now face up. A photograph, slightly warped, showed her, younger, curled beside a shoe she no longer recognized, but remembered wanting to destroy. The smell of toast hung in the air, not fresh, a memory baked into wallpaper. A television screen flickered gray on gray. No image, just light. Then a sound. Behind her, a voice again, but this one sharper, human-shaped. "Where have you been?" She turned. No one. The hallway empty. The bowl had stopped spinning. A drop of water hung on its lip, trembling, refusing to fall. She took one step toward the couch. Something brushed her whiskers. Not air, not touch. Pressure, like a name being thought about. She stopped. The photo frame slid 2 centimeters toward her. The couch cushion dipped slightly. No sound, no weight, just the clear, undeniable shape of return. She backed toward the door. From the hallway mirror, her reflection returned, but different. She was older, or was simply sadder. The distinction had vanished. The voice again, not yet, but close. And just then, for the first time, she smelled the hand, not the scent, the temperature, that body-warm heat that moved behind breath, present, nearby, real. But when she turned to face it, the room was empty, and she was no longer certain she'd entered alone. She returned before dusk, drawn not by sound or memory, but something else entirely. A sensation behind her eyes, like the echo of a light never turned on. The alley, once narrow and dismissive, now stretched longer than it should have, the bricks on either side bearing a thin film of something waxy, like candle drippings long set. She walked slower tonight, her paws hitting pavement that clicked, instead of thudded, each step marked by a faint vibration that didn't belong to her. The window above was closed now, the curtain gone. In its place, a sheet of clear plastic rippled faintly, not from wind but from breath on the other side. As she climbed the steps, the wood beneath her feet creaked in syllables, an unfamiliar rhythm, like a code no longer in use. The door was not open, not shut. It simply was, and beside it, placed with intention, a single object, a matchbox. She sniffed. The scent was dry, sharp, mineral. Inside, no matches, only a folded receipt. This one printed, not handwritten. Time-stamped 5 minutes from now. She looked up. The porch light above her flickered, not as before. This time it pulsed like a heartbeat nearing the end of a sentence. She didn't hesitate, not out of bravery, out of inevitability. She pushed, the door gently, and it opened with no sound at all. The room inside was different again. The couch gone. The floor, black vinyl this time, patterned with faint crescent shapes, as though someone had walked in circles and vanished mid-step. In the center of the room, a basin, metal, shallow, filled with what looked like rainwater. except the surface, reflected nothing. Not the ceiling, not the walls, not her. She circled it once, then a low thump, not behind, below. She froze. The thump came again, and this time she felt it in her jaw, a thud without echo. Her ears pulled back. From the far side of the room, a door she'd never seen before began to open. Slowly, vertically, like a trap door on a hinge no one had touched in years. From beneath it emerged not a shadow, but a line, thin and glinting, like a single gray. Hair rising from the center of the floor. It lifted upward, swaying, hesitant, impossibly straight. She watched. The line curled at the top, formed something that might have been fingers, not reaching, just there. Then a warmth, not physical, the kind that exists in memory, triggered by a voice saying your name in the right tone after years of absence. She stepped closer. The line disappeared. In its place, a single print on the floor, larger than her own, shaped like a human palm pressed down with care, slightly smeared at the edges, as if it had tried to hold on to something and failed. She lowered herself beside it, one paw extending, not to touch, but to witness. The air shifted again, a low mechanical hum, like a fridge long unplugged suddenly remembering its function, emerged from the wall. She didn't flinch. She closed her eyes, and then barely audible, directly beside her ear, came the words, "It was always you." No breath, no weight, just language, shaped around her name, even if she'd never had one. When she opened her eyes, the door behind her was gone. Not closed, not moved, gone. In its place, a mirror the size of a window, showing nothing, not the room, not her, just white, as if the reflection had already moved on. She turned back toward the basin. It was empty, dry, but the floor beneath it was wet. She didn't lick it. She knew what it meant. Outside, something metallic clattered onto concrete. She moved to the porch. The glove had returned, smaller now, curled tightly. She sat. The wind, for the first time in weeks, stirred her fur with no message, just presence. The curtain across the alley swayed once, though the window was closed, and somewhere, a sound. Not a call, not a whisper, but something that had once been a name, rose, caught itself, and softened before it reached her. She waited, every night, and now the hand waited too.